Hi everyone, and welcome back to my series on how I lost 150 pounds in 11 months. Today's episode is all based around intermittent fasting and how I used it as a tool in my weight loss journey. First, I thought it would be probably best to start by explaining what intermittent fasting is. And it is basically an umbrella term for varying timing schedules of cycling between eating and not eating, or cycling between fasting and eating. Basically what that means is that somebody who practices some kind of intermittent fasting eats in a certain period and doesn't eat in another certain period. And those periods are defined either by the person or by the type of intermittent fasting that they choose to do. There are various well-known or popular types of intermittent fasting which you might have heard of or might not know specifically what they are. There is 16-8, which is where somebody will eat for 8 hours and then they will fast for 16 hours. Then there is the 5-2 diet, which is where somebody will choose to eat between 500 and 600 calories for 2 days per week and eat regularly for the other 5 days of the week. There is also just people who choose to take a day off from eating and they choose to fast for a full day or 1 or 2 days in a month or something like that. And then there's also a type of fasting called OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, and that is basically where somebody chooses to eat their full meal, not specifically within any particular calorie range, but it's different for each person, and they eat all of those calories at one sitting and then they don't eat for the rest of the day. There are many benefits and some drawbacks to intermittent fasting, but as I'm not a medical professional and I'm not a scientist, I'm not going to get into that in this video today. I'm just going to talk about my experience, what I do and how it's helped me, and also give you a few tips if you choose to try the type of fasting that I do or what I have found has been helpful. But again, as I am not a medical professional, I am not suggesting that this is something that you should do. So I wanted to first kind of delve into why I chose to practice intermittent fasting. I was diagnosed with binge eating disorder about 10-11 years ago, and binge eating disorder is where you go through periods of consuming really high calorie amounts of food. I have also had food addiction and food addiction behaviors for the majority of my life, including childhood. And that's where I'm constantly seeking food and comforting myself and any emotions that I'm feeling with food and trying to basically numb out with food. It's an addiction. And one of the results of those two eating disorders is that my satiety levels were damaged. And satiety is the feeling of fullness. It's when if you are eating a meal and you are full and then you know that you are satiated basically, so you don't need to eat anymore. For me, because I had been living in a binge cycle or food addiction cycles as well for the majority of my life, I didn't really understand what being full meant. I had eaten so far past full so many times that full didn't really register with me anymore. It just wasn't a trigger that I was used to, and basically I had broken my satiety levels. And what intermittent fasting had allowed me to do is it allowed me to understand my body's true signal for hunger. So because I was so constantly in a food addiction and searching for my next hit, I never understood when my body was genuinely actually hungry. I just thought I was hungry all the time, but physiologically, I wasn't. And intermittent fasting, by not eating for certain periods, it allowed my brain to connect better to my body and to understand when I was genuinely hungry. And that is why I chose to practice intermittent fasting. So next I'm going to talk about what intermittent fasting looks like for me. And this might not be what you see some other people doing or what you choose to do, and that's completely okay. I have adapted this to myself over the last year, and it's really worked for me. So I choose to practice 16-8, which is where I fast for 16 hours and I eat within an 8-hour period. That does not mean that I eat for 8 hours. I want to be really, really clear on that. I don't eat for 8 hours. I eat my calorie limit that is given to me by the program that I do, BodySlims, which is in a calorie deficit in that 8-hour period. The reason that I choose to do this is that I know when I'm hungry and I know when I'm not hungry, and that's what intermittent fasting has helped me to do. So a day for me looks like I wake up in the morning. I wake up typically between 5:30 and 6 a.m. most days of the week. I then go for my hour-long walk and I come back. I drink about 1 litre of water straight out of the bath, the first thing that I do when I get back. Then I make coffee. Now, there are different rules of thought in the 16-hour period of fasting. Some people believe that you cannot consume any calories within that 16 hours. I choose to believe, and I have done for the last year and the years prior that I have practiced intermittent fasting, that I can consume up to 50 calories in the morning in the 16-hour fasting period. I have 2 coffees in the morning, and my coffees add up to 48 calories. So I have 80 mils of almond milk with my coffee, and that adds up to about 48 calories. Then at 12 o'clock, I break my fast, and that's when I eat something solid and something above 50 calories for the first time that day. If you have followed me for any length of time, you probably know that I break my fast every single day with a big old bowl of raw vegetables. And the reason I do this is because it's something that I picked up from Alan Carr's Easy Way to Lose Weight years ago. And that was talking about really getting back to your natural diet and to consuming foods that Mother Nature intended for us. And I'm not going to get into that now, but that's basically the reasoning as to why I do that. And he always suggested that you start on an empty stomach, you start off with the things that are easily digestible for you. It has worked out really, really, really well for me over the last year. So I start off with my big old beautiful salad. I then have whatever my accompaniments are. I consume my vitamins then as well at the same time. Then I have a snack in the afternoon. I eat my dinner between 5 and 6 o'clock. I like to have a dessert most days, not every single day, either fruit or some kind of chocolate or some kind of crisps or popcorn. And then I stop eating at 8 p.m. And that's when I'm finished eating. And then I don't eat again until the next day at 12 o'clock. And I do that 7 days a week. And what that has taught me is about the cues in my body of when I am truly hungry. Because as I said, my satiety levels were broken due to my binge eating and my food addiction behaviors over the last 20 something years, that it was really difficult for me to understand when I was hungry. Now I actually understand. My brain is connected with my body. I am grounded and I'm understanding that, okay, I have a physiological need for food, not an emotional need for food. And it's helped me to differentiate between the two. I also thought what I would include in this video is just a couple of things that I have found have helped me throughout my intermittent fasting journey. I have been intermittent fasting solidly for 1 year, but I have had periods of intermittent fasting over the last 6 years. Where I typically, most of the time, I'd say the majority of the time, I have been intermittent fasting and I didn't lose weight. I was just eating my calories and consuming my calories within a certain window. And it did help to start to understand, to regulate my satiety levels. But generally in the last year, I've been on it full time. And I do suspect that with a few exceptions, possibly holidays, etc., that I will probably eat this way for the majority of the rest of my life, depending, things change all the time, so I can't guarantee that, but that's my intention at the moment. So what I thought I would do was go through a few tips with you that I think might help, or things that I have learned about intermittent fasting over the last while. The first is the importance of water. I like to drink an awful lot of water during the day, and I find that consuming water first thing in the morning really helps to get my body awake and to get moving and to get active, and kind of, you know, also my freezing cold walks beside the seaside helps as well. But I like to drink water, and I think it's really important that even though if you're not eating, you're staying hydrated, and you can drink as much water as you want with intermittent fasting. Second is to find what works for you. I mentioned 4 different types of intermittent fasting at the start. So there's the 16-8, which I do. There's the 5-2, where on 2 days you eat a low amount of calories, 500-600 I think is the normal, or it depends on each person. And then on the 5 days you eat your regular meals. There is where periods of days where you just choose not to eat, and then the OMAD, which is where you eat 1 meal a day. So they're the different ones that for, you know, that you could choose from, and I think there's other ones as well, I'm sure. As I said, I choose 16-8. That's what's worked for me, but you know, find which one works for you. The next tip that I have is that I choose 16-8, but you don't have to, you don't have to be rigid with it. And that's something that I think that a lot of people, when they start any type of diet, be it a plant-based or vegan diet, whether you're taking up intermittent fasting, you think you have to do it perfectly. And, you know, say it's 8:05 and you're still eating, you don't have to put down your fork at 8 o'clock and go, okay, no, I can't eat any more past this, unless you choose to. I choose to be flexible with my intermittent fasting, and I think that that's really worked for me. So for example, if I'm late back from work and I'm at a meeting or something like that that's gone past 8 o'clock and I haven't been able to have dinner beforehand, then I'm going to eat dinner afterwards. I'm not going to go, well, I'm in my fasting period, so I'm not going to do that. That's not realistic for me. I choose to eat afterwards. And that kind of brings me on to, it's kind of connected to my last tip, which is to be flexible. Don't be so rigid with yourself. So like if you're going on holidays and you decide that you're on holidays and you want to eat breakfast every day in the beautiful breakfast buffet, if we're ever allowed on holidays again, you know, do that. Do what works for you. What I have done is be flexible with my timings. So we went on holidays to the south of Ireland in the summer of last year, and there was a breakfast option with the hotel, and I wasn't going to turn down a free meal. So we chose to change our eating window from 12 to 8, and as opposed it was from 10:30 to 6:30 was then our eating window. So we actually adapted our eating window. And actually one day we had dinner much later, and that was fine as well. You know, you can be flexible with it. And I think that that's the thing with any kind of diet, where I don't necessarily think of intermittent fasting as a diet, but any type of, you know, if you're in a calorie deficit or anything like that, be flexible with it. Like, understand for special occasions and things like that. The key to anything is consistency and practicing something consistently. For me, the reason that I chose to do intermittent fasting is some of the health benefits of it, which I said I'm not going to get into, but for me it was really to learn about that satiety level and to learn my physiological triggers in my body as opposed to emotional. And that's it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little bit different to the other ones because it's not necessarily on how I lost weight. It's just something that helped me along my journey because it helped me to understand those triggers. But yeah, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And while this was supposed to be the last episode in the series, I may be coming out with some other videos because some of you seem to really enjoy them. So if you have any other video suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you, guys.